Welcome to Friend of a Friend from Creative Pinellas, a new conversation series drawing connections between artists, inspirations, friends, and mentors, and showcasing the individuals that together make a creative community.
This program is brought to you by Creative Pinellas. Our mission is to facilitate a vibrant, integrative, collaborative, and sustainable Pinellas County arts community and arts and cultural destination. Creative Pinellas is funded in part by the Pinellas County Board of County Commissioners, Visit St. Pete Clearwater, and the State of Florida Department of State Division of Cultural Affairs.
Tonight's conversation features visual artist Akiko Kotani and Creative Pinellas Manager of Curatorial Programs, Content, and Engagement, Danny Olda.
All right. We'd like to welcome everyone again to this first installment of Friend of a Friend. Before we begin, it'd be appropriate to introduce the CEO of Creative Pinellas, Barbara St. Clair.
Hello, welcome. Thank you for coming to our first version of Friend of a Friend. We are so excited about this idea, which introduces some artists from our community. And then as we move forward with this once a month, the artist who you see today will be interviewing a friend artist, and et cetera, et cetera. So we're really excited about this program. Today, you're going to enjoy meeting Akiko Kotani. Is an artist who lives in Gulfport. She was our artist laureate last year, the Creative Pinellas Artist Laureate. And she will be interviewed by Danny Olda, who is in charge of Creative Pinellas curatorial activities. Also a very excellent interviewer. I know you're going to enjoy this evening tremendously. And so without making you wait another minute, Danny and Akiko, please begin and enjoy this wonderful conversation.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to it. Like Barbara mentioned, this conversation really has a unique format that I'm really excited about. So this format, it's intended to highlight the sense of community that is at heart in the arts here in Pinellas County. So basically, the way this is going to work is that previous episode's guest will speak with a guest of their choosing. It's a Pinellas County artist, performer, creative, that is a friend and inspiration, somebody that they admire. For example, for this episode, I'll be speaking with artist and friend Akiko Kotani. For the next episode, Akiko will be speaking with a friend of her choice. And then following that episode, that friend will then be interviewing and speaking with an artist of their selection, and so on, as we make our way through the Pinellas County creative community. So really excited about this conversation and really about the series as a whole. It's really going to be a lot of fun. So as I mentioned, I'm going to be speaking with Akiko Kotani tonight. To briefly relate her bio, Akiko was born in Waipahu, Hawaii. She received her BFA in painting from the University of Hawaii and her MFA in textiles from the Tyler School of Art, Elkins Park, Pennsylvania, and now residing in Gulfport. She spent her former years as a professor emerita of art at Slippery Rock University, Pennsylvania, and 2 years at Koç University, Istanbul, Turkey. Her work is in the permanent collection of several private and public museums, including the Cleveland Museum of Art in Ohio and the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. Her work is currently represented by the Leslie Kern Gallery here in St. Pete, Florida. So Akiko, you were the first Creative Pinellas Artist Laureate last year. So prior to that, I was familiar with your work, especially with soft walls, because I saw that at the first Skyway exhibition at the Museum of Fine Arts in St. Petersburg. But I didn't know you. We hadn't met at that point. But since then, we worked. When you were an artist laureate, we worked quite a bit together. We got to know each other. It was really a lot of fun working with you over the course of those several months. So I'm excited, and it feels appropriate that we start this series off with you. So I think it's going to be fun.
Great.
So we'll get started right away. I wanted to ask basically how you've been doing, during COVID-19 with social distancing. So it's sort of a non-art question. What have you been doing for fun since you've been at home? Social distancing. What visual art, non-visual arts interests have kept you busy?
Well, thank you very much, Danny, and I'm so happy that you called me a friend. I know that we work professionally together, you as a curator, and you even helped install my show. So I know how you work. And I know you even had your father help install.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, so I can, honestly say that I've gotten to know you very well. And I want to thank you very much for inviting me to this very, very interesting project that you have going, speaking, to one another in a conversational way. And you've asked the question what I've been doing since COVID, of course. I'm indoors. I have brought my work from my studio to one bedroom of my condo. And what I've been doing is to bring parts of it home so I can work on parts of it. And I will take the parts back to my studio to assemble it. And that is what I've been doing as far as my artwork goes. As far as a non-art projects, I and my husband have gotten to be more interested in cooking. So we spend quite a number of time planning our menus and looking at recipes and our rare, excursions out to buy our goods. It's become a very big event when we go out to
Yeah.
to the grocery store because that is really about the only thing that we're doing.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, because we are concentrating on that event, we have started to actually cook together in the kitchen. And at first, we sort of got in each other's way because it's a new kitchen for me. Not only that, normally my husband Bernie does the cooking. So with me in the kitchen, he gets sometimes very annoyed at because I'm in his space, so to speak. But we've gotten along and have had some disasters, I must say, of dinners. But I would say more successful ones. So that seems to be the focus, really.
Oh, that's funny.
Being indoors.
I know that's like when the grocery store visit becomes the highlight of the week. It's funny, my dad also has started cooking a lot more. He's been dropping food off. But have you found yourself trying to innovate in the kitchen or?
No innovation. We've been, using recipes and being very diligent about following recipes. But I must say, when I don't have a few ingredients, I can be very creative about, and usually sometimes it's a disaster. It doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
But I do want to say something about what I miss, if I could. What I miss about being shut in is going to openings and seeing people, seeing fellow artists, and it isn't necessarily that I have long drawn out conversations with them, but it's really lovely to go to an opening, to see artwork, to see people enjoying themselves and talking to one another. That whole occasion, I didn't realize how much I would miss. And I do miss that. I would say I miss that the most.
That's interesting. I felt the same way. And especially because I'm an introverted person, so I usually don't enjoy those types of events. But it's funny how we think of them sometimes as just being parties, but now that we don't have them, it's interesting how important of a component of art it is, getting together to look at it together and talk about it.
Yes, and that's what I wanted to ask you about. If you're right in the middle of it. You're a curator, and you see and you attend a lot of openings. And how do you feel about that?
That's a very good question. It's a little bit conflicted. I'm on the spectrum of how much somebody worries about coronavirus. I'm on the more frightened side. I'm very, very careful, and so I'm happy to be in my house and out of not out in the public. On the other hand, the opening reception is really very important. The gallery being open in general is very important. The opening reception I found is unique because it's when people not only get to see the work, but they get to speak with each other about it. They sort of build their own narrative about it, and that hasn't been happening. So it feels like people have really been interacting with artwork in a fundamentally different way over the course of social distancing. I don't know necessarily that it's bad just yet, but it is different, and I enjoy. I miss the way that we used to enjoy it. It's if this goes on much longer, we need to find a different way. Here at Creative Pinellas, we have tried to find ways to virtually replicate the opening reception, but it's a work in progress because it's really an important part. It's not just a party.
I was very stunned at the way you put together that virtual exhibition. And I have to tell you that one of the items that was in the within was the chair, because the chair that was against the wall, it helped to scale the work because there weren't any people there. And so I don't know if that was intentional that you had, the chair there, but I noticed that. And I was so happy to see the chair. I can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me okay? Okay. So there are several cues throughout the exhibition to give you a sense of scale, which is important. And that's important to your work too.
Yes.
A lot of your work is very large scale. I imagine it would be very hard to replicate your work effectively in a virtual setting, or a lot of it at least. Have you? So I imagine that you must really miss exhibiting in person.
Yes, I do. Although I do have a work up right now at the Tampa International Airport, and it is up for travelers. They are not encouraging, the public to come to view the work. It's part of their gallery. They have a very lovely gallery at the International Airport in Tampa. And so if anyone is traveling, going through the airport, they should try to stop and see the work. There's 7 artists, and I would say it's a very beautiful, very strong show.
Yes, I've heard a lot about it. Really looking forward to it. If I could see it in person someday. But I know your work will also be in the upcoming Arts Annual at the Gallery at Creative Pinellas, which I should mention is open right now. There's a limited number of people that can be in the gallery at any one time, and of course masks are required. But you can still see some work in real life. So we've been working with it, I guess.
Yes, I have.
So thinking about all of these restrictions that we've been under now, sort of trying to think the opposite way. Something I really wanted to ask you is if nothing were impossible, do you have a dream project or a dream collaborator that you'd work with?
Yes, we wonderful if you would collaborate with me. be my mentor and my helpmate of all the questions I have. I do have a project that I even have a working name for it, because when I have these ideas in my, what I call my image field. I have working titles because they do change over time. Now, this particular project I have had since the 80s. It was even longer in gestation than Soft Walls. And Soft Walls I've been thinking about really for a very long time before it was realized. And the project is called, I have two titles now. One, it's called Breath, and the other, it's called Breathe. Now, Breathe is the latest iteration for my title. And believe it or not, it really is about lungs that are breathing. I thought about this project in the 80s, and it absolutely, the hairs on the back of my head stand up straight now when I think about it, because I can see it. It'd be beautiful in your gallery because I see it large. I see it coming off the ceilings, or really where the ceiling, and I think of it as the ceiling and the walls meet for some reason. Very large forms. I also see it as someone performing a dance. And I have a feeling I do know who I want, to have some dancing and all of that. So I have all of these, I have all of these images in my image field now. And as I realize it, as I bring it to realization, in other words, every step, builds to the final work. Right now, it's very vague in my head, although it's really a very strong intuitive project. And this is how Soft Walls was for me. The resulting work was really not at all how I started. I started with just ideas and, maybe vague images, and it could be this, it could be that, and this and that. And as when I start working, and I have, like for instance, this project for Breath, I will need an engineer because it is going to require machinery that I have no idea how to work. But I'm sure if I talk to an engineer, they can help me realize what I want. And then there's construction, and then there's, people to make the forms for me. I even have patterns that someone designed for me in maquette form. And so I do have parts of it, for me. And of course, a big part is I do need funding. So then I have to start writing and doing grants to find funding for the project. So, it's not just one thing. And it is something that I live with. And I guess you can say I'm very patient, although I'm not that patient. I don't think I am, but it takes a long time for my projects to give birth. But, I think I have a good 10, 15 years to go. And I think that's enough, but I think it's becoming urgent now that I start working on this project.
Hopefully much more than that. But it's interesting to think that you have a lot of projects possibly in the wings that waiting for the right time?
Yes, I do. I mean, more immediate. Yes, I do. And they are related to color now instead of white crochet plastic. I have a project that I will present at for Skyway 2 at CAM, the Contemporary Art Museum, and it is called Red Falls. So it is red crochet plastic. And I do have another project that I really, really want to do. And it involves black crocheted plastic. I just have to find the right venue, the right place, the right circumstance, so I can realize that particular image. So yes, there's quite a number of things in the wings.
Yeah. So quite a bit of your 3D work I really associate with space, and maybe especially because the two pieces that I got to work with exhibiting, they really dominated the Creative Pinellas Gallery, which in itself is a huge gallery space. How much does the idea of space play into the piece you're creating while you're making it, or is it the other way around? You create the piece and then look for the space that will suit it?
When I did my graduate work at Tyler School of Art, the theme throughout my studies there and my production was about space. And a dominant idea for me was activating space. Now, I just wanted my pieces, and I was doing weaving at the time, my woven panels, to activate the space they occupy. This is the kind of narrative that I had in my head, that is really it was a predominant idea for me in my studies for tapestry. I must say, my primary professor understood what I was doing, but there were many professors in the craft department that scratched their heads and they didn't know what I was talking about. And they thought my work didn't have enough stuff. I don't know what they meant, but it was not, there wasn't enough on the surface, I guess. And my response was, it's absolutely, that's the only way I see it. I'm sorry, I can't do anything else but that. So when you bring up the idea of space, it has been very important in my work. And I really am very interested in having my works be something like punctuations in space, if you can think about it in that way, and that it really should activate the space around it and to resonate beyond, the work should resonate beyond what it is. So now I have a question I want to ask you.
Sure.
How in the world do you how in the world do you work with such an enormous space that in your it's really a museum in your galleries?
Yeah,
it's enormous.
It's been a challenge. Yeah. Prior to working with Creative Pinellas, I worked as an independent curator, and I curated several shows, but they're all in smaller galleries comparatively. So the main gallery space at Creative Pinellas is really large. Of course, the ceilings are high. They're like 16 to 20 feet high. So not only is it tall, but it's very long. So it is hard. It feels, every exhibition almost feels a bit like a puzzle to ensure that there's enough work to fill it, but not crowded. You know, to understand the way people walk through the space. And there are some challenges that, you know, I never dealt with before working in that space. For example, for the space to not overwhelm smaller pieces, to position them such that they don't get lost in such a large gallery. The rest of the gallery space is very nice. We have, you know, of course, 3 smaller galleries and 4 more even smaller galleries. So it allows a bit of flexibility. But it has been a challenge sometimes. Other times it's freed us up, like showing your work. Or during some of the arts annuals, we had some very large pieces, like an installation by Kenny Jensen. We've had some large 2D work from Make It Stackhouse. So it's been fun to have the freedom to really to feature some really large work, which has been a lot of fun too. Yeah, so I've really enjoyed it. It's been it's just been a lot of fun to be able to do that. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to doing more. We've got a few shows in the works. For example, our emerging artist exhibition is coming up, and it seems like it'll fit just perfectly in the large space, not being too crowded and not being too sparse. But yeah, we'll get there. I had a question for you. I read in your bio. I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead. We're having a difficulty with, it could be my connection, I don't know, but go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, it's a little bit loud here because I've got a thunderstorm outside. It's great timing. But you know, before we began the video here, I asked you how to pronounce the university you work at, Koç University in Turkey. So, you know, you've lived and worked around the world, but now you seem perfectly at home in Gulfport here in Florida. I want to ask what it's been like, I guess, you know, working and living around the world, but what is it about here in Pinellas County and Gulfport that you enjoy?
You know, I must say that when I first moved to the area, I did not know any artist here. And moving here, one of the things I noticed about artists and also people in general, especially artists, they're not afraid to you know, be nice. And they're not afraid to be, you know, to welcome you and to help you get started and to help introduce you to people. And the reason I say they're not afraid is because when you go into a new situation, into a new community, it's interesting you spoke of Koç and of Istanbul. When I first went to Istanbul, it was a totally different atmosphere. Obviously, it was a different culture. But here, everyone is really lovely. They're not afraid to help. They're not afraid to, you know, be nice. And they're not protecting themselves. And I have no idea if it's the weather. All I know is, you know, Danny, my work also has been really accepted widely here. And that really helps me be friendly also to people that are so nice to me. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And it's funny how it feels like you really fit in Gulfport. I came down, yeah. It must have been a few months ago. We had coffee in a cafe down there, and it felt, it just felt right. So so you've lived in many different places. Have you found that your work has changed depending on where you are living and working at any one time?
Yes. In fact, I did speak of living in Istanbul and teaching at Koç University. When I first got there, it was such a different culture and a different situation. I couldn't work. I really had a block. I just could not. I couldn't find art supplies. I couldn't, well, obviously the language barrier was a difficulty, but I did know some artists that really tried to help me. And it was just a very difficult time for my artwork, and my artwork stopped, and it frightened me because I thought, oh, my career is over. It's the worst feeling for an artist to feel this way. And yes, so I did. Now, to say that was a bad experience is not so, because when I came back to Western Pennsylvania, where my studio was, I started to work, and the flood of images from Istanbul, it just came torridly. I mean, I couldn't stop it. So it was almost as if it was damned. It was there, but I just couldn't access it. Now, I'm not an expert in these matters, but all I can say is what I experienced. And so there's a tremendous amount of work that I did. The Bosphorus series, for instance, the stitched bamboo threads on paper, that's all about living in Istanbul and my memories there. Wonderful, wonderful times that I had there. So, it's odd. I mean, our artists are very, we can't predict what's going to happen.
Yeah. So, you talked a bit about there being a block and eventually it releasing. Have you found any tricks or strategies that help you get past a creative block?
I remember, I think I'm going to butcher this saying, but I recall Woody Allen saying 90% or 80 or 90% of work is getting there. In other words, put yourself in your studio. It may be that, I don't feel like going to the studio. I feel lazy. I just, I just don't want to be there. It's too hot. It's too this, it's too that. But simply going to the studio and being in the studio and just sort of puttering around, even if I don't want to work, that really helps. Also, I do have strategies such as sketching. I find that sketching really helps to loosen, images, even doodling. Sometimes I'll just take a pencil and just doodle, and it will develop into pictures and ideas. And so, yes, I do have, things that I sort of trick myself into getting back into but I do know what it means to have a block. It is a creative block. It is very frightening. And I'm sure that all artists have had this.
Yeah, it does feel that way. And I think for people who haven't experienced, maybe because perhaps they don't make art regularly, if they're not artists, don't realize how painful it can be.
It's painful. Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm.
And also that brings to mind about artists that deal with depression, how sometimes it can be romanticized in an artist, but really, I think for a lot of artists, it prevents them from working, and in that sense, it just makes things even worse.
It is. It really is. I mean, you know, an artist is a human being, and the human person is, you know, as we both know, very complex. So it isn't just one thing. It's, you know, how you feel, how you think. And also now we know that it's different chemicals that are in our bodies, in our mind, and how they all interact one with the other. It's all, you know, all one system going on inside of you. And then it's also your environment, the things that impact upon, you know, upon the person. So all of these things are, you know, makes the human, and also I must say the artist, you know, a very complex person. But isn't it wonderful that an artist can express these difficulties? I think it's just, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing that we have an avenue, you know, like a safety valve, you know, that we can, you know, have it come out.
Yeah, that's definitely true. When I did used to make art, I felt like not only the expression, but the process itself, I found really relaxing. In fact, I have a feeling that's the only reason I made art is just for the process of it. Your work seems a lot like that too, very meditative in its process. Do you find it soothing?
Yes, I find my work soothing at times. I would say most of the time. There are times when that's the last thing I want to do. It's very frustrating. And those are the times that, you know, I just simply have to push through and get over. In other words, it really is to me, because of the nature of the type of work I do, it's so repetitive. And it is frankly very boring to do a project for months and months and sometimes years on end, to sustain a certain kind of energy level to put into the work. But I also find that it's similar to swimming. When you swim, and when you start swimming, it's the last place you want to be. You want to jump out of the pool. You don't want to be there. It's cold. But then you hit a level, you know, they call it the second wind. And you hit a level and you really feel fantastic. You feel great. And that is how it feels working in the studio. And I must say that this is not part of your question, but when an artist is in that state of being, you know, like a second wind, it feels really great. It almost feels like some kind of a high. And you really have a sense that you can realize the ultimate image that's in your, you know, in your brain or in yourself. And it really is seductive. This is why artists keep working, because you have moments like that that seduce you into thinking that you can achieve the ultimate image that you have in your, you know, in your mind. That's why we keep working. People always say, how can you keep working like that? Artists are crazy. It's really because it feels great when you are in that state and you really feel that you can reach that ultimate image.
Yeah, you just keep chasing that. I imagine that there's some artists, you know, I think I've mentioned the same before on the Creative House live stream, that I heard somebody talking about running before, that they said they don't like running, but they enjoy having had run. I imagine there's artists like that too.
Exactly. Exactly. Art is that way as well, you know. No, I'm curious to know about, did you study art? I mean, you are a curator and you know so much about design and you know so much about putting, you know, things in space, and really your shows are very, very well done. The space.
Thank you.
In fact, it's so well done that you don't even think about the complexity of, you know, the placement and all of that. It's almost like
I appreciate it.
almost like really, you know, a chess game.
I really appreciate it, and I really enjoy doing it. I did originally study visual art to be a visual artist, and so when I studied out in California. When I moved back to Florida, you know, I came back as a visual artist, mostly working in painting and installation every once in a while. I saw an exhibition that I wanted to read more about, and I didn't see any articles about it, so I wrote a blog post about it, which eventually led to a regular blog, and that led to actually getting paid to write about art, which turned into a living. And eventually I was invited to do some curating here and there, which I really enjoyed too. So I feel like I eventually got to the place where I made peace, I think, with the fact that making art is not really what it's not what I'm good at. I enjoy doing it, but it's not what I'm good at professionally. I enjoy enjoying other people's artwork. I love spending time with other people's work and thinking about it and getting lost in it. And as a curator, it feels ideal because I get to enjoy other people's work, and there is a measure of creativity too. So that's why I really enjoy it. I love being by myself in a gallery, whether it's to write about an exhibition or to put together an exhibition and imagining how somebody else will experience it.
Right.
Yeah, so I initially trained as a visual artist. I really didn't train as a curator. It just sort of, it came over time. And, you know, I think a lot of people's stories are that way. It's finding out what you really should be doing is a very, sort of a very convoluted path sometimes.
Yes, it's not a straight line.
Yeah, no, never. And you know, writing was something I always enjoyed doing. I remember the first time I really realized how much I enjoyed it. So I felt like I'd end up having to end up there someday. So
Right.
yeah. So speaking of occupations, you know, something before we wrap up, I really want to ask also is that, you know, you mentioned your husband earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Is he's a philosopher. So I can only imagine what, you know, the conversation between you as a accomplished professional artist and a philosopher may have. Do those conversations or the products of them wind up in your work?
Yes, I think we share, you know, what we speak about together in his work and what I hear him speaking, and when I read his writing to the extent that I can. I would just say that the way that we are similar and the reason why we have so much to talk about is that we both start with abstractions. In other words, he starts with an abstract concept, and that's how he interprets the world, with, you know, abstract concepts. And I interpret my world or the world around me through abstract images. And so we start there, but we both end up with tangible products in this world. In other words, his tangible product is books. And he is now, in fact, writing his 10th book, and it's going to be Cambridge Press that he's working with. I'm so proud of him.
Wow, good for him.
Yes, and you know, my tangible products obviously is what has been shown in your gallery and their artworks. So you see, we have a similar type of process, although we come to the world and our process in a very different way. And so we do have quite a bit to talk about and to really teach each other and to learn, about each other's work. So yes, we do have, in fact, sometimes we start the day by talking about what we're going to do today, and then we end up, an hour later and say, gee, we really talk a lot, don't we?
and then you meet halfway in the kitchen and collaborate.
And eat.
Yeah, eat the tangible products you come up with there.
Right.
It's always been fun being able to chat with you two, and it's always a lot of fun, of course, working with you two. I'm looking forward to some future projects. Is there any future projects you have underway that you might be able to tell us about?
Well, I did discuss some of the things, some of the things I have in some of the works that that I have produced and that I'm going to do. But other than that, no. And I will be speaking to you about the annual.
Yeah.
I haven't forgotten.
We take that offline.
Yes, I haven't forgotten. And we will, I'll have to meet with you and we can discuss, what I will show.
Yeah, well, that's exciting. I'm really looking forward to it. And the Arts Annual will be a lot of fun. Just to let people know, to pencil it into your calendar, it'll be in November, I believe. We have a few dates. We'll share more details soon because it's going to be a bit different this year, but just as exciting, if not more so. And it'll feature Akiko, so it'll be a lot of fun. So, Akiko, I wanted to ask you one final question. So we talked about at the beginning of this that this is the first in a series of videos where each month one guest will be hosting the next one and inviting their own guest. I wanted to ask you who you plan on having as your guest for next month.
Yes, it's Babs Reingold. I talk to her occasionally and on the telephone, very long conversations with her about everything, about art, about our career, everything about how frustrating it is to be indoors and so on and so forth, and our different strategies. So I am really looking forward to speaking with her and having a conversation with her, because there really is quite a number of things about her work that are still mysteries to me. And perhaps I can, find out more about it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Babs is always a lot of fun to speak with. Very interesting, and I'd love to see you two together, especially. I think it'll be great. So that'll be. I was gonna mention that's gonna be next month. Next month to come on back, and you'll be able to catch Akiko and Babs Reingold speaking with each other, continue the conversation, and then the month after that, which will be September, Babs will continue the conversation with her own guests. And it'll be cool to sort of see it wind its way through the creative, the Charles County creative community. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
It'll be fun.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to thank you, Akiko, for joining me with this conversation. Is there anything before we wrap up that you want to share with anybody that might be watching?
Well, that, my work is now at the gallery at the airport. And of course, my work will appear with you at the annual. It will also be appearing at the Baker Museum in Naples, Florida, in a show called Florida Florida Contemporary, and I believe they will be featuring 4 artists from Florida. So I was very, happy to be involved with that show.
Yeah, well, cool. I'm glad to hear that still exhibiting, even though we've been mostly indoors and on our own.
Yes,
very good.
Of course, everything depends on, Mr. COVID or Miss COVID, and
yeah,
how things are scheduled.
yeah. We'll keep on going.
Yes.
Well, I want to thank you for joining me, Akiko, and you and Bernie continue to stay safe and continue making work. And I'm looking forward to working with you again soon.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much.